bear hugging tree stance, basically where you're in a horse stance and you hold out your arms like you're hugging a tree. My Sifu at the time told me, like, if you could do this for 45 minutes straight without moving, then that's a good thing. And I was just like,
Hello, my name is Jamie Sparling. I am the head instructor of Affinity Martial Arts and Wellness in Wausau, Wisconsin. Welcome to the FormABLE podcast, where we talk about formable moments in the lives of martial artists, as well as the formable moments in our martial arts training. Today, I have Jessie Santiago with me. This guy was on the board whenever I tested for the Defensor method at least twice. And he is a great martial artist, a great martial arts instructor. And he came to talk to us a little bit about his formal moments as well as what he's been doing lately. Hello, Jesse. How's it going?
I'm doing good. Jamie, how's it going at your end?
Yeah, life like I was saying earlier, life is good. I feel very, very blessed. Very blessed. Yeah. I How was everything in Arizona?
Still adjusting. It'll be like almost 2 years since I moved out here, so still trying to figure out whether I fit in or not. I heard it takes about 3 years if you move to a different city or state to see if it actually fits you. Otherwise, it's time to move on.
For sure, for sure. And you have a tremendous amount of skills and connections throughout different areas, so you're not tied down by any means, It's nice out there though.
Yeah, I mean, as we're approaching summer, it's about to hit the 100+ degree weather for 100+ days. So it usually gets hot like around May and lasts until maybe September, October. So it varies year by year from what I've been told by the locals.
Hmm. Yeah, the heat down there is absolutely no joke. Guru Steve Fristo lived in Tucson, and I was able to go and visit him just a little bit out there, and he was quite pale, and so he really had to like watch it out there in Arizona, uh, due to the heat and all those different things.
Oh yeah, I mean it's totally different from humidity heat. As I've realized that the dry heat is dangerous if you're not hydrated because you're not sweating, and
Hmm.
you're like, oh, I feel fine, and then the drowsiness hits you, which is bad. That means like if you have that feeling like you're about to fall asleep, you're like, yeah, that's a dangerous tipping point where it's like you're dehydrated and you need to get to a shade and drink some water, and it's a different lifestyle. And yeah, things out here, it's a bit brighter. There's a lot of sand and beige color nature areas, so everything just reflects the sun more. So wearing UV sleeves and wearing sunglasses on a regular basis and sunblock is like it's more than what I was used to when I was living in Chicago. So
I bet a little bit different for a Chicago boy.
oh yeah, and the fact that also you have to drive everywhere here, where it was like in Chicago, you was like 15-20 minutes, to get to your destination. Here's like now everything is like 45 minutes to 1 hour one way just to get to your destination.
Yeah, that's not easy commuting, especially in martial arts because we do it so often. You know what I mean? At times, that's almost the harder part on the body as I get older. Jesse is like the car ride home after the seminar.
I mean, I get it too. Especially now with my day job, I work about an hour's distance away, so it takes me 1 hour to get to work, and with traffic on my way home, it's about another hour 20 minutes. So the only thing that's keeping my body from falling apart is getting my deep tissue Thai massage on a weekly basis, just to
Yeah, brother.
have someone step on my back, just
Yeah.
to loosen things up.
We're different. We're different. This is one of the only podcasts that'll be like an opener. I need somebody to step on my back. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? More, but martial artists that are out there are going to be like, that makes so much sense. Even envious that you have somebody to step on your back. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's funny.
exactly.
That's funny. Jesse, could you tell us a little bit about your martial arts journey and time with Guru Nate Defensor, as well as all the cool things you've been up to?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if we're gonna go back to my childhood, of course, I started off with like the after school kids karate program in the kindergarten, which was like only like a semester, but
Mm-hmm.
that was like my formal, I guess, training. never got above white belt because didn't really pursue it as much. But my brothers were actually my first instructors. So I had two older brothers growing up. So, learning martial arts and, basically roughhousing was with them. And, we enjoyed just the old school Shaw Brothers kung fu movies
Yes, sir.
and the big surge of 80s Japanese movies from the 80s, like Shogazugi movies that came out in the 80s. Like that, we were big fans of that. And so we were always replicating what we saw in those movies. Formal martial arts training didn't come until actually my late teens, early 20s. So basically, right after college, like this is when mixed martial arts was coming about, and pretty much I, started thinking about like, maybe I should try this out because I was in my early 20s. I was fresh out of college. I was frustrated, and I just, for me, I'm like, let me see if I could make some money doing this stuff. So
Yeah.
it was a hybrid system. Actually, I met my first Sifu and coach through a friend of mine in college, and it was more of a hybrid kung fu system. So kind of JKD-ish in philosophy, but his own interpretation. So he took the elements of Tai Chi, JKD, Chinese Sunda, which is like kickboxing, and then a little bit of other things that he's incorporated through the years. And he told me, he was like, this is geared more towards fighting, and so it's not really used for martial arts. And when I said like he told me with the whole Tai Chi training was like, I'm not going to teach you the 100+ forms that's required in Tai Chi. He said, I'm going to teach you what it's really meant for. And he really focused on, applications. But he was really into the internal aspect as opposed to just external. So meditation was always a big thing. So he would make me go into horse dance and basically, I think I think Jason covered this. Jason Brigham covered this from the Fencer Method. Bear hugging tree stance.
Yeah.
Basically, where you're in a horse stance and you hold out your arms like you're hugging a tree. And my Sifu at the time told me, like, if you could do this for 45 minutes straight without moving, then that's a good thing. And I was just like, so trying to stay in one spot in that position without overthinking, because like your muscle starts to fatigue, your mind starts to, you're like, oh, fight the fatigue. The key thing is to focus on your body structure and your breathing and keeping calm. And that's what I took away. And the deeper aspect, which I didn't pursue, was just like trying to use a mental projection, where it's like, okay, you're here in Chicago, but can you go travel elsewhere? Can your mind go travel elsewhere while your body's still stationary? So that was more of the higher level that I didn't really focus on, but I was just focusing more on my stability, body structure, my breath, and just keeping calm. So that was like my first journey into like martial arts.
For a young
both
person, that had to be hard, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just that moment. I mean, I remember being in Tai Chi class and having to, like, they just hold the ball, and
Yep.
you'd end up after a while with just a pool of sweat from like, what is happening? And it kind of starts off with, oh, whatever. Okay, I got a ball, right? And then, yeah, that's it. For
Yeah.
a young person, man, that's hard.
Yeah, especially someone in their 20s.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, that my regimented training was like between that, a little bit of kickboxing, JKD, and then my coach and Sifu would take me to boxing gyms, just to touch hands with different styles and pick up what they do. I couldn't afford Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes at the time because they were too expensive. So I would cross train with my friends that did do it, and we would just like do it in the living room of their place or the garage. Fast forward a couple of years later, I'm like, I really didn't really, with my experience with training for MMA, it just became a job. I felt like it was a job. So my passion for martial arts started to dwindle. Especially like now it feels like, okay, you got to cut weight. You're doing it because you have to do it, and it's not because you want to do it. And then at the same time, I met this girl, and training went out the window. So I'm like, yeah, I'm done. I'm taking a break from this.
Yeah. You're not
But
the
it
first,
was,
sir.
yeah.
You're not the first. You will never be the last.
But yeah, I mean, that was around the same time that I met the late Guru Nate Defensor. because this was the time my cousin was involved with a lot of the Filipino community events going on in Chicago, and just through that network, I met the late Chris Dino,
Yeah.
and they were saying like, yeah, it's like we're having these Kali Eskrima classes in my friend's backyard in Chicago. So that was around 2004, and that's when I first met Guru Nate in backyard training of like a friend's backyard, and I took to it. I mean, it was like it was different from training in a gym. It was just there was no structure to it, but I took to it and I was like picking up fairly quickly. And I remember it was that summer of 2004, and you know, with my training, with my Sifu and all my other expenses, I'm like, I told Grenade like I can't really afford this at the moment, but I really liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And soon after, that's when I kind of took a break from martial arts training altogether, up until 2009 when I came back to Chicago because I tried moving out to LA and that didn't work out, and
Mm-hmm.
then came back to Chicago and like I was really in a bad headspace, and I met Guru Nate and his group again. That they were training out of another mutual friend's gallery space, an art gallery space in Chicago, and then I got reconnected, and I met Guru Nate again, hooked up with Chris and a couple of other people, and started training. And like at the time I was like broke, and I told Guru Nate, I'm like, it's like I'd love to continue, but I can't really afford it at the moment. And he said, just come and train. We'll figure out an exchange program. So I was like, well, okay. And like basically this helped me get out of my mental rut.
Yeah.
And just I was like training almost 3-4 days a week with everyone, and kind of like got my focus back. Because yeah, at the time I was a really heavy smoker.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I kind of like was I mean actually we all were. So like between me, Chris Dino, and a couple other participants, yeah, that kind of like helped me like quit smoking like as soon as I started training, like almost a year afterwards. But yeah, that was pretty much my training with Defensor Method. Started in 2009 consistently, and then officially finished in 2021 when we all became white shirts.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, between my journey of completing and training Defensor Method, I also got connected into doing Balintawak, um, which started around 2013. So actually, how I got introduced to Balintawak was one of Guru Nate's friends from Cincinnati, Ohio, the late Grandmaster George Penafiel. One of his students from Cincinnati moved to Chicago, and through that connection, when I first met him, his name is Robert Grossman, who is also a guru under Tabata Balintawak. Yeah, when he first came to like my classes, because I was teaching basics for Defensor Method,
Mm-hmm.
I just thought I'm like, oh, it's another newbie. He has a stick, and I was like, oh, I'm probably have to start over with like basics. But he actually picked up one of the drills fairly quickly. I'm like, oh, this guy has some moves. I'm like I asked him like, what's your training? And he's like he was telling me like, oh yeah, my teacher Grandmaster Penfield told me to come train with you guys. So I'm like, oh okay, cool. It's like, well, what other styles were you been doing out there in Ohio?
Mm-hmm.
He's like mostly Tabata Balintawak. And I was like, oh, Balintawak. It's like that's one of those styles that piqued my curiosity. And I've always seen videos of it in the past on YouTube, but there was really no one within my area that taught it. So we kind of made that agreement where I would teach him Defensor Method, and then he would teach me Balintawak, and that pretty much just lined up with my journey. And it's weird because that same year in 2021, like fast forward to 2021, that's when I got my Guru White Shirt and Defensor Method and my fully qualified instructorship in Tabata Balintawak. So that kind of happened all in the same year. So
That kind of happened, right? There's a lot of work that went in between all that, but that's
yeah,
amazing, man. That is, I had no idea, but that sounds like Guru Nate because he always encouraged people to kind of do their own thing and do Defensor Method.
yep. Uh, so that, and then I also started my FCS training. I think pretty much around COVID, just like online training.
Mm-hmm.
So Filipino Combat Systems that was started by Tuhan Radio Naldo. Um, again, my main instructor for that was in Ohio because he was also a guru under Tabata Blintawak, or a fully qualified instructor under Tabata Blintawak, and he was also instructor for Filipino combat systems. So that's how I got hooked up into FCS and been doing that, I'd say, since 2020, 2021. And then, yeah, I'm still doing it right now. And from time to time, I'll cross train with other systems as well. But in terms of like an isolated focus, I would say like my main base would be a Defensor Method, Balintawak, and now currently Filipino combat systems.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. You have a group that you lead in the Balintawak system, I believe, correct, sir?
Yes. So I have my original Chicago group,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I also have my San Francisco group at the moment. And with my Chicago group, I pretty much left one of my students in charge
Mm-hmm.
for the Balintawak department because it's funny because everyone started off as my Defensor Method students,
Mm-hmm.
and then now they wanted to learn Balintawak, so it was like a hybrid, not really a hybrid. I kept the curriculum separate, but I had to start teaching 2 hours where it was like 1 hour Defensive Method and then 1 hour Balintawak in one day. So it was split. Once I became a fully qualified instructor into Wada Balintawak, all of a sudden people were hitting me up like, "Oh yeah, we're curious about Balintawak," and like they wanted to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
So my first beta students were the Defensor Method students, and
That's how
and
it
pretty
goes.
much, yeah. I mean, some of them took to it, and some of them were like, "Yeah, it's like I just want to focus on DM." I'm like, it's cool. I'm like, I'm not trying to force you to do it,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's like those who took to it were like, "Oh, I like this." So, and it was pretty much like the same thing in my San Francisco group. We I was doing an online class with Mactan Filipino Martial Arts, and actually, I've known the guys in San Francisco for a while, and the people that contacted me that wanted to learn Balintawak were actually the students of one of my friends who opened up his own school
Okay.
in San Francisco. So I'm like, before I say agree to anything, make sure you get their permission. So I'm really old school in terms of, for me, I'll teach anyone, but if you're coming from another style, make sure you get the blessings from your teacher before I start teaching you. And then from that, it was like, okay, they got the blessings. I contacted my friend who was their instructor, and I'm like, hey, is this cool? He's like, yeah, man, go ahead. I'm like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
cool. And that's pretty much, started off with 4 people in San Francisco. One dropped out because of life, but the three has been consistent since 2021 now, and they really like the art on top of what they've been learning in the past, and then
Mm-hmm.
they're getting other people within the area excited. So it went from 3 to 10 people now. So I'm like traveling between Chicago and then San Francisco.
That's great. That's great. I saw on the YouTube channel something, the Russia House.
Yes.
Yeah. What was that all about? That seemed incredibly cool.
So the Russian House event with Guru Alexander Pisarkin, I've known about him for years. Like I really liked his production of his videos that I saw on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
When COVID happened, he actually reached out to me through Facebook Messenger, and he's saying like, "Would you like to attend the Russian House? We're going to be in Cancun, Mexico, because like the restrictions during COVID, they didn't allow travelers in the Philippines at that time." So I'm like, shoot, Mexico is right next door. And I was just looking
Mm-hmm.
at plane tickets. And actually, a friend of mine hooked me up with points so I could actually go to Cancun. And that's how I got hooked up with Alexander Pisarkin. And the lineup of instructors they had were actually Tuan Radio Naldo of Filipino Combat Systems, GM Bobby Tabuada of
Mm-hmm.
Tabuada Balintawak, Gat Puno Baet of Garimut System, and JJ Hervas of Illustrissimo. So it was interesting because 3 out of the 4 styles is like I train in, and,
Yeah.
and
It sounded like it was made for you.
yeah, it's weird. So it was like the 3 founders of those systems. I was like basically they're not only just documenting stuff for the YouTube channel for FMA Pulse, but I was getting to learn nuances and stuff that's not covered in the curriculum at these
Mm-hmm.
seminars. And of course, when you're in Cancun and you're hanging with a lot of people, that's like, oh yeah, the seminars are cool, but everyone's waiting for the after party. So,
Yes, sir. Yeah,
so
I bet the entire experience was probably pretty cool. How about the after party? Did you have fun at the after party?
oh yeah, I mean, in terms of the sightseeing, the food, and of course the local, drinking. We train hard and we also party hard, because when I asked, well, like when everyone's asking Alexander Pisarkin, I'm like, what time are we going to be training tomorrow? He's like, 8 o'clock on the dot. I'm like, dang, that's early, and we're like out till like midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. So I'm like, oh, okay, but yeah, we would go from like 8 to 4, and then after that would be just like relaxing and having a good time. But yeah, I mean, the training experience is like, yeah, it can burn you out after a certain time, especially learning from multiple instructors in one day.
I bet.
Um,
I've been there.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but it's I mean, it's a great experience. Like great, it was great seeing FMA spread to other parts of the world and
Mm-hmm.
them promoting it um, as Filipino martial arts and not rebranding it as something else.
Yeah.
So one thing I respect about Alexander is he's still calling it what it is and not like special Russian fighting systems.
Mm-hmm.
He's like no, he's like I'm teaching FCS, I'm teaching Listrisimo, I'm teaching Tabata Blintwalk, and he's giving credit to where it's due. So
That's a beautiful thing.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, right now, when you get a chance to train for yourself, right? Because you have students, and there's a certain block of probably work that goes for taking care of the groups, right? And then there's certain when you are working on things for yourself, which I know at this time period you're helping out your parents, so you probably don't have as much time to train for yourself. But when you do, what do you do? I like to just move around with a stick. Rick Fay talks about the 13th area of Kali, which is stick and coffee, and yeah, I love it. I mean, that's every yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean that's one of the main reasons why I moved to Arizona was to be closer to my folks. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the challenge of teaching, training, and producing content, it was just became more of a challenge, especially now that I had to get a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Um, it's tough because I have a desk job and I'm in front of a computer all day, and everything just gets tight and locked up with the body.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing I can do is just walk around from time to time. Like I'll do like a mini carenza at home just to get the blood flowing.
Yes, sir.
Going back to Boada basics, like levels 1 and 2, which can be done solo. And then from time to time, I'll either go to Cincinnati, Ohio, or I'll go to Santa Maria, California, to learn FCS, and that's pretty much like my therapy and workout,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just like I need to get out. Like even though I'm like in Arizona, I'm like I, I got that traveler bug. I need to get out
Yeah.
sometimes. So yeah, I mean it's not as rigorous as it used to be, like my training, just because like I'm turning 45 soon, and
Life.
the yeah life, and I noticed that the tendonitis arthritis was hitting my elbow, so I had like tennis elbow,
Yep.
and I type a lot, so I'm like, oh, I hope I don't get carpal tunnel soon. So I pretty much kind of like stopped the intensity of workout, and like I needed time for my body to heal at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So like the pretty much my tennis elbow, the tendonitis has subsided, but I have to learn to control the intensity of training, because I can't just train like I did in my 20s and 30s and like go 100%,
Yes,
because like
brother.
your body's be like, nope,
Yeah.
break.
Exactly. And we want to be able to do this forever. And that's one of the beauties of the Filipino martial arts is with the weaponry, you can train the rest of your life,
Yeah.
to lesser or greater degrees. Could you tell us a little bit about FMA Pulse and, what inspired you to do that piece? And I always think it's fascinating when I check out the channel and you have the different masters that are on there. That's, really um, just showcasing Filipino martial arts. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I didn't really start FMA Pulse. I don't know if you remember Mike
I
Karubin. There's
do,
also,
yeah.
yeah, him and another former business partner. Actually, like we're still friends. Romeo Magiga. They started FMA Pulse like around 2009. Um, so I didn't really jump on until officially like until around like 2011,
Mm-hmm.
and that was like the same time like I got back into training to FMA, and pretty much I did a few videos with them in the past as a freelancer.
Mm-hmm.
And when Romeo left to go to Seattle because of work, I basically took his spot as one of the as a business partner. And we had these big ideas in terms of what we wanted to do with FMA Pulse, because it was really never about us, Mike. It wasn't really about Mike and me as like quote unquote influencers. We were just
I
like
can see that, yeah.
we just wanted to promote the Filipino martial arts
Mm-hmm.
because within all the other Asian martial arts, everyone knows Bruce Lee. Everybody knows Ip Man, from China. Everyone knows Miyamoto Musashi and Sensei Ushiba in Japan. And I'm like, we were thinking, I'm like, we have our own grandmasters, but they're not really put out there
Yes.
um, unless you research it.
Yep.
Um, so Mike was basically telling me it's like, we should need to document some of these grandmasters now before it's too late. So we're like, okay, first it started off as like audio interviews online, and then transition into in-person interviews. So that's pretty much what our goal is, and like what our mission and vision is just to promote the Filipino martial arts in all its colors. So, I've been able to meet, a lot of great people from different styles. Even the people that, Guru Nate used to train with,
Mm-hmm.
uh, especially on the West Coast. And yeah, I mean, it's that's still the mission and vision, is just to document the growth of the Filipino martial arts and still give credit to where it's due, because it's hard to promote an art if people just don't know about it. And right now, it's just like, all right, people need to know the culture and the history, so not just the fighting art. So
I truly think you do a great job of it. You and Michael both. There's never a flair to those videos where it's about you guys, like just doing cool stuff. It's genuinely about the Filipino martial arts and the different masters, that you have on there and practitioners. And what was that like delving in to those getting to meet some of those masters and just little pieces? I mean, I imagine some of them you got to train with a lot, some of them maybe just a small portion, or you know, what was that like?
well, I mean, when we were first starting out, it was hard to get people.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was because like old school Filipino martial arts maestros and certain groups are really still like secretive and closed door, where it's like you had to get the special invite to talk to someone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's little by little, once we started gaining trust with certain groups, I'm assuming just through our network and our credibility of we're not exploiting anyone.
Yes.
We're here to promote the Filipino martial arts as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And as the word got out, then people were more open talking to us directly. And the fact that they could just speak to us, in person, as opposed to like on the phone, like we were used to doing. We are like, yeah, I mean, if you're local, we can meet up for coffee and talk. Or for me, like I would go and travel, and we would
Mm-hmm.
talk. And then after that, then I would say like, hey, if you want to do an interview, they're like, yeah. So that's how things grew with FMA Pulse. And of course, we know there's a lot of ideas that I want to do, but because of life as of recently, with work and helping everything out with I'm helping now my brother help pay for this house now. So
Yeah, for sure.
uh, yeah, it's like some of the project ideas had to take a, a back seat temporarily until I can stabilize some things.
That happens in life, man. That just,
Yeah.
in my opinion, or whatever, it's just my experience that just happens. And there were times in your life when listening to your story that you weren't able to train, and then you're right back into it. So that makes total sense. Uh,
Yeah, because I'm pretty much right now I'm running FMA Pulse by myself, And as I've gotten older, it's like things are just your energy is not what it used to be. It's like the drive is there, but you're like, I need some rest because I
Yeah,
can't think straight anymore.
for sure, for sure. So, could you tell us about training with Guru Nate, like a story or something like that? Because we talk about him at Affinity Martial Arts, uh, and I try to share my experience with him, but I was not a direct student. I was an away student who came, got portions, went back and practiced, and so I didn't spend as much time with him.
Yeah, I mean, Guru Nate, he was definitely a giver.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like the most like Filipino relatives where you go to their house, they say keep eating, keep eating, keep eating.
Ah.
And he was like that with the martial arts. He would just give you everything, and like almost every class felt like a seminar because you never know what you were gonna get. There was no scaffold learning progression. It was like, oh, we'll do this today, and then like, okay, one day we'll be covering Inosanto, some of Inosanto stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next class would be Serrata, and then the next class can be some of the Penjak Silat, and then it was just you never knew what was going to happen uh, unless one or 2 weeks was like, okay, we'll cover Villabro or Serrata, and then after that it was on to the next thing because yeah, it was like it was really old school training in terms of like a sink or swim situation where it's like
Mm-hmm.
you do it based on how you saw it and then replicate it. But for me, like with my experience, I was able to do this. Like it may have taken a few times to polish it up a bit, but
Mm-hmm.
okay, I got it. And I was like trying to see like all the different curveballs of how Guru Nate would just mix up things and then just like pretty much just all right, do this. I'm like okay, and then yeah, it's a different way of training. And like when I had dinners with Guru Nate, and he's like, yeah, it's like this is the way I was taught. So it's like hard to formulate this as like a standardized system,
Mm-hmm.
especially defensor method being a multi-style system within itself.
Yes,
It
sir.
was just like I was always thinking about what's the identity of defensor method. Um, so because like when you look at styles, like I'll go to like kung fu styles, like you could always see like the five different, the various different styles of animal kung fu.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you could see the snake, the crane, the tiger, eagle, based on hand position. So like you could tell what style it is. And within the Filipino martial arts, I was just like, and I was like my experience of like looking at different styles within the Filipino martial arts, like a lot of the stuff is trying to look familiar and similar. And then
Mm-hmm.
I was at the same time I was like really looking at the fencer method. I'm like, it's like I get the Serrata part, I get the Villabro part, and I get some of the Silat, but I was trying to see like what is defensor, how is defensor method different from the other multi-style systems. No, I learned a lot from a lot of my friends in the West Coast because what they were doing was basically no different what we were doing in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, I mean, with Guru Nate, it was like he was just mad, this mad scientist. It was just like he
Yes.
would just come up with stuff on the fly, and then you're like you just try to replicate it.
As best you could. A mad scientist, literally, Jesse, with the utmost respect, the same as you. I said that at Affinity. It was just, you just didn't know, right? And it would get tied together at the end in some way, you know what I mean? But at the same time, oh my goodness. When he came to my first school and we started with double stick warm ups solo, I felt like I was going to lose my own eye and poke myself in the eye. And just the different things we were doing. And from that moment on, like, he definitely taught that drinking from the fire hose type
Yeah.
of concept. Yeah. Did that type of training lead you to like uh want to see how other systems are structured? Like you fell in love with the Berlin to walk and you talked about how there was like a level 1 and a level 2 that you could do solo,
Yeah.
right? And do you like training in those systems that have those layers right? Because it's like a yin and yang. Sometimes in street you're drinking from the fire hose all the time, and then it's nice to go over here and just go through the BC Dario or the ABCs on the other side. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, I get it. I do appreciate structure
Uh-huh.
because as a former instructor in the education system, we can't just wing it. We need a lesson plan for the students.
Yes, sir.
And I always look through. Always look at martial arts or anything that I do with as an instructor, as a former teacher, is like, how do you? Yeah, for me, I can do it, but then how would you teach it? That was the big thing with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so looking at some of the international FMA systems with their curriculum, it's like it's a progressive scaffold building process where it's just like, okay, we're not going to just teach you Sombrada day one and you have no martial arts experience whatsoever. It's like it has to be a progression into that. So with Balintawak, Filipino combat systems, with the curriculum they've devised it, FCS has five, and Tabata Balintawak has seven. So it's all broken up. It's just basic, solid foundations. So it's just like you can isolate certain training areas.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that as a learning tool because you always want to have your foundation strong in each level that you train, and it should be like second nature.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, oh, it's the end all be all to a fight, but as a teaching tool, I think it's important because I've heard a lot of the old school ways of like FMA seminars with the late Professor Remy Presas and Guru Dan, where if you didn't have a notebook and you're writing down everything, it's just going to go through one ear and out the other, and you're trying to remember what you covered that day or at that seminar.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And for a lot of those students, like with Guru Dan, you know, he would even tell us, I have like people that or they're coming to their first seminar, and I have people that have been with me for 30 years. So try to hold on to one thing, right? Or just sometimes just stay with one technique. You know what I mean? And of course, nobody does it because it's all so beautiful, it's all so cool, and you just want to try everything one time, and that's so hard to get folks to do, including myself. So I also really enjoy structure right now when I'm looking at a new system, especially so that I could separate it and get it in the body a little bit and devote a specific amount of time to that one thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's and it helps like if the person that starts like their own system or if they're part of a system, if they want to grow it and pass that information to other people, it's kind of you kind of do need like a formal curriculum, uh, and then everything else outside of the curriculum is it's supplemental. Especially with Tabata Blintwalk, it's not trying to be a multi-style system. It's like it's single stick. They treat it as an impact weapon and they keep it close range at standing. So they're not trying to go into grappling range. They're not going into double stick or Ispati Daga. They're like, nah. The founder of the system in Cebu, Philippines, Senior Grandmaster Anshun Bakon, single stick, close range. This is what we're going to focus on, and that was it. So, but even with the history, because like I had to get into Balintawak history,
Mm-hmm.
there was no curriculum either back in the day for that system either, until later on, where one of the students who was a lawyer, attorney Jose Villison, helped develop a curriculum as a teaching tool. Just because, like, if you're teaching one on one, it's different from teaching like
Yes.
20 or 30 students at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like one on one, your learning would be faster. But if you only have 1 hour and you have 20 students, you got to find a ways to like something for them to practice and for them to remember.
Yes.
So, and throughout the years, like, especially with Tabata Balintawak, he's helped to refine a curriculum, stripping Balintawak to the basics, the bare basics. And then once you got the bare basics down, then he'll have like, okay, come with me to my house and I'll teach you all the stuff outside of the curriculum, but the foundation is there. So
Yeah. Do you think, Belinta walk in general is very popular right now, and people are searching it out. And maybe, well, do you think that maybe the structure of it and the because structure usually leads to the ability to teach a student well, right? And so, do you think that structure helps with it being so popular right now? I mean, I just see a lot of videos of it. I think it's absolutely fascinating.
Well, it all depends on who you're learning Balin to walk from.
Sir, of course.
Um, so I mean, all the old school heads will be like they'll say Balin to walk is Balin to walk. It's
Mm-hmm.
just how do they transfer that information to other people?
Mm-hmm.
Some are old school where they don't go by our curriculum. They just go by the like, all right, do this, do that. Oh, you didn't block it? Well, block it next time because it's your fault type of training.
Yeah, yeah. And
um,
there's a certain amount of you can learn really good that way sometimes,
yeah,
right? Up until a certain point.
exactly. And especially on in this part of the world, they don't like
Yes,
that
sir.
type of training. Um, so, well, I'm not going to say everyone, but I'd say a majority.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so GM Tabuada had to make it more safe, but yet keep the essence of what the system is. But if you're going to go to like another Balintawak branch, they may teach it differently. And from my experience, when I touch hands with the different Balintawak camps, it's the patterns are similar and the same. It's just the energy is different.
Mm-hmm.
So every head grandmaster I've talked to in Balintawak, they all say the same thing. It's like it's Balintawak is Balintawak. It's just a different energy with the hands and how they speak and how they think. And it makes sense because GM Bobby, he's big for a Filipino. And when I went to Cebu a couple years ago and I saw all of his friends and they're all shorter than him, and I'm like thinking about it, I'm like, okay, so GM Bobby is like the Mike Tyson version of Balintawak, and everyone else is like the Manny Pacquiao middleweight lightweight version.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good
so
way.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it because the structure of the teacher and or the founder does come into play. Does come into play. I mean, it has to. There are certain techniques that I think we do in a Santo method because Guru is a little shorter in stature. So the way that we check things might be a little bit different based on that piece. And he'll teach us broad so we understand, right? It's a complete system, but uh, there are certain things that makes total sense. That makes total sense.
yeah, and the thing is, it's with Guru Dan, Senior Grandmaster Angel Cabalas, and Senior Grandmaster Anton Bakon. Filipinos in nature are not big people. They're not.
Sure.
They're not tall. I've heard, from what I've heard, Angel Cabalas and Anton Bakun were barely breaking 5 foot. So these are short man arts. For it to be transferred from individual to individual, it's like, yeah, the speed and power and reaction has to be there, but you can't really be the founder because shoot, I'm like 5'10", 220. So
Yeah, there's a certain amount of different questions that'll be answered in that body structure versus the other structure, you know, for sure. Uh, Filipino combat systems. Tell me
yep.
about that. That's something you're working on. If I remember correctly, we talked the other day. That's something you're working on right now. Is like the next level in that system.
Yeah. So I've been doing Filipino combat systems since like 2020, 2021, like right around the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and actually the one of the guys that I learned from, he's also a fully qualified instructor under Tabata Blintuak, and he was also the student of late Grandmasters George Penafiel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he always wanted to keep an open mind also, and he shared the same views where it's like, yeah, we want to learn each style and give respect to that style and be proficient at that style, but we also want to see what's out there, become proficient in that art, and maybe pass that on as well. So we know how to categorize each system separately,
Mm-hmm.
so because each of them has its own identity. But yeah, I mean, with Filipino combat systems, it was interesting because I started that right around 20, yeah, I think 2021 officially, because I remember finishing my fully qualified instructor that year, and then you know, Punong Guru Michael Melanion in Cincinnati was like, he's like, hey, with you should start training FCS now, like now that you've kind of focused like with Tabata Balintawak in terms of the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
I think you would take you would take to Filipino combat systems because there's a lot of parallels with the fencer method. So I was like, okay, and and I started. I mean, it has its own flavor because, like the fencer method, when I interviewed Tuhan Ray, he said when he first started out, it was a hybrid system of Pikiti Tersha and modern Arnis.
Okay.
And then through his experience training with different grandmasters, it started to become its own thing. So I could see the parallels in that aspect. It's the triangle footwork warm ups. There's 64 attacks. Some of it I was able to pick up fairly quickly, and then some of them where I'm like, okay, this is a different coordination. I got to work on this one. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, they break things down into 5 levels, and it's something that the instructors can go to when they're teaching new students because Tuhan Ray and his other gurus, they can't be everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to be a rep, the curriculum is there for them to pass on that information. So when it does come, for them to test, and Tuhan Ray or any of the higher level gurus are there, they're gonna check them. They're like, okay, show me your students,
Yeah.
show me level one. And then it's funny because during the seminars, Tuhan Ray will go off script, and it's like grenade like all over again. You don't know what's gonna come out of his idea basket.
Mm-hmm.
But the foundation is there. The thing is, it's like going off script from that foundation.
Yeah. An understanding of movement to get us to where all of a sudden now we can maybe almost follow uh, a master like 200, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. So, uh, during your FMA Pulse times, okay, can you tell me a story about like meeting one of the older masters where that was just like, wow, this was an experience that you'll remember forever.
Yeah, I mean, especially meeting the big names like, of course, Grandmaster Bobby Tabuada,
Mm-hmm.
um, Grand Tuhan Leogahe, and also the late Grandmaster Rene Latosa out in California. It was really like an honor to meet those names in person
Mm-hmm.
because like it's like, oh man, it's like almost you're meeting a celebrity.
Yeah,
And and it's like it was like, wow, it's really enriching to hear what they have to say, both on camera and off camera. For me, I learn a lot more once the training is done and once the cameras are off because they'll say stuff that they don't want to put out there into the world, but they'll say something during dinner.
yeah,
Uh, and I was just like, for me, it's just like I'll keep that information quiet, but it always like it's like what they show is not exactly the full story, or it's not entirely the whole story of what's being put out there in media.
for sure. That's great. He, my Tai Chi instructor, Larry Riddle, here in town, he teaches Guamping Tai Chi Chuan, and he says that martial arts are just another series of relationships, and that's what it's about for him. And I always think that is so incredibly cool, and another really good way to look at it, because for martial arts, for a lot of us, it's you know maybe it's fear based and we want to like get confidence or whatever it is, but we stick around long enough, we get so much more, and the relationships are the coolest part. Meeting a grandmaster of anything, I bet a grandmaster of basket weaving would make that the most interesting thing ever, you know but a grandmaster in martial arts, that's a uh, totally different thing. Every time I got to spend time with Guru Nate, I was always blown away. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing your time and your experience with us, Jesse. I really appreciate it. Like I said, you were there on the grading panel when I did the defensor method. I think 1A, and at that time period, it was broken down into 1A, 1B, and 1C. But out of the 4 or 5 times I went, you were on the panel, and although I knew you were going to be a little hard on me and you had high expectations, you know, I always appreciated that much more on the right hook, right?
Yeah, I mean, I try to be like, at least, I lived, breathe, you know, the fencer method in FMA, and then like
Yeah,
I wanted it to be presented it, in a good way. And I could see, how Guru Nate, like, he believed in quality over quantity.
yes,
So that was something that I try to instill in like my grading and teaching. It's like, yeah, we could go out and have a beer afterwards and hang out, but when it's time to work, I'm a different person. So
yeah. And I appreciated that, and the feedback you gave me was always legit, and that was great, especially for being when you're traveling. So you're away and you don't have the instructor all the time, so you're practicing what you think is the best that you can be, right? And then you get there and you get little tweaks, and man, I really appreciated it. Jesse, do you have anybody that you could think of you could recommend for our podcast? And I don't want to put you on the spot. All right. I just always think it's a good opportunity to ask the guests, and it kind of creates a really neat web around the Formable podcast where people are connected.
yeah, I mean, in terms of, let's see, a lot of guys who are doing things similar to what you're doing, um, in terms of martial arts and interviewing people online.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, Chris True in Florida is a good one, because his dad is Bruce True, modern Arnis practitioners, but they're under the international Arnis international flag.
Yeah.
They're good people. And then Coach Kurt out in Alaska, he does a podcast, and it's just promoting pretty much FMA and
Mm-hmm.
martial arts in a positive light, as opposed to it's being shown in other social media outlets where it's a lot of trash talking.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm. Martial arts is great, and it can drive us, but it's the people sometimes we screw it up at different points in our lives. It feels like, and
and
it's
I
such
get
a
it. I mean, controversy brings eyes and ears and
yes, sir.
attention. And if you're trying to sell something, the loudest duck is the one that draws the attention. Where it's like sometimes that can shoot you in the foot sometimes.
Well said. Quack quack. Well said. All right, brother. If you could give one of our viewers advice, or like one of our students advice about something that they could use as an action step, in the next 24 hours, uh, that would make them a better martial artist. All right. Do you have any?
That's a tough question. I mean, I always ask people, especially if they want to learn, especially Filipino martial arts from me.
Hmm.
I'm like, I always ask them, like, why do you want to do this?
Yeah.
What's your purpose for doing this?
Hmm.
And it goes to the old ways of the old maestros, within any style of FMA. You couldn't just go up to them like and say, I want to learn. They'll be like, who are you?
Yeah.
You have to get a referral, because you want to make sure you gauge this person and you read this person to make sure they're in the right mental mind state, because you're going to be training with other people, and if you're not there totally up there mentally stable, it's like you're not going to mix well with this group, and I'm also putting them in danger if you're a loose cannon.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. So I always ask people, like, why are you doing this? Why do you want
What's
to
your
learn it?
why?
Yeah. And your purpose for doing this. So for me, I want to keep the group safe. I want to keep the brotherhood, that family environment together.
Hmm.
And it's pretty much, for me, I'm like, why do you want to do this? This is the big thing with me. And for me, why I do it, for me, it's like, before it became this focus on cultural identity, it was just therapy for me. I was in a bad mental space, and it helped me get me out. So kind of looking like for that within people. If you're trying to do this, for your mental health, and you're not here to like look for trouble, then I can help you. But anything else outside of that, where it's like you're trying to do this for negative purposes, like I'm not the teacher for you. So
Brother, I respect that so much. And that was old school with Steve Fristo. You know, first day I showed up to class, he asked me if I knew how to defend a knife. And I'm 18 years old. I'm smart, and I took like 3 Aikido classes, Jesse. So I'm like, yeah, I totally know how to defend against the knife. And it was clear about 17 seconds later that I didn't at all. And I'll never forget, then we didn't do the knife again for like a year and a half. And he was of that old school mentality that you're going to go do the swing and going to get coordinated and do all that stuff. But until we really know what's going on in here, and
yep.
that would be kind of like a one-on-one style thing, you know. And I always respected that. Nowadays, everything is out, but that was something I think that people did that just to, like you said, to preserve their group,
Yeah.
right?
It's also, I've realized this now with like some of the curriculum based training, that a lot of this stuff is really basic, but in my eyes, I'm like, this is to test your patience and your temperament. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you're getting bored and you're getting frustrated just doing the basics because you're bored, then okay, that means something is not really right together up there. Because like if you're gonna lose your cool just doing basics, that something might happen where you might lose control and hit your training partner,
Mm-hmm.
or you might go a bit overboard. So like not knowing your strengths and your power, where it's like, oh, something that you would stop because you could feel like your training partner can't handle it anymore, you would stop. You just don't keep going
Yes.
forward with it. So
Mm-hmm.
just to
Definitely.
be, yeah, so it's like it's also like a humbling experience in terms of like checking your ego. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
mhm.
All right. So anyway, you gonna come back and talk with us sometime again?
Yeah, man, just let me know anytime. Usually weekends are busy if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
working, and if I'm not traveling. So between Chicago, San Francisco, here, or wherever else I'm invited, it's just like, yeah, it's like I'll teach anyone as long as you can keep an open mind. I'll talk with anyone. And we can go get a cup of coffee or get a beer after training, or if not, just hang out.
That's great, brother. You always been that way. Maybe after one of your next trips, you go out to go see your students. You can come back and tell us about the experience. That'd be really cool.
Okay, I'm gonna be actually in Chicago in July, because I'll be co-hosting Grandmaster Bobby Tabuada at North Shore Academy of Martial Arts.
Yeah,
So I'll be there for a few days. So I know a lot of people want to meet up with me, but I'm be like, I only have a certain amount of vacation days, so I'm only here for a few days. So if you want to meet up after that, then we can go and hang out. But yeah, I'll be in the Midwest again, and then yeah, I mean, for me, I'll teach whoever wants to learn, um, and then just always keep an open mind, but also watch your back with certain people.
that's real talk. Real talk here on the Formable
Exactly.
podcast towards the end. All right. Guro Jesse, thank you for stopping by and spending time with us. It's so appreciated. All right. And we're going to put links in the description as well as the comments towards FMA Pulse. All right. Those videos are just outstanding. You're going to find a lot of great stuff on the channel regarding Filipino martial arts. And Jesse, thanks once again. This is time for us to sign off for the FormABLE podcast. Here I am, Jamie Sparling with Affinity Martial Arts and Wellness in Wausau, Wisconsin, and I have Guro Jessie Santiago of the Defensor Method, as well as Balintawak, working on Filipino combat systems and promoting Filipino martial arts and that brotherhood to the best of his ability. We appreciate all of you watching. Thank you.
All right, thanks, brother.